Low-key, this might be one of the best games on the Game Boy. Everybody knows Mario. He's up there with universally adored mascot characters like Shrek and 20 of the first 150 Pokemon as some of the most recognizable characters ever. Mario wasn't always the king of video games, though. If it weren't for a certain beloved ape, there may never have been a video game renaissance that led to the incredible future of video games we live in today. Donkey Kong, the arcade game, not the character, is the starting point for Nintendo's eventual Italian plumber mascot. But the game wasn't called Jumpman Begins, or Jumpman Origins, or Donkey Kong, a Jumpman Story. It was called Donkey Kong. And I'm pretty sure the only reason it's called Donkey Kong is because of the King Kong brand knowledge. It's like a Pizza Hut or a Burger Friend. It's there to trick you into thinking that you're playing something licensed or eating something licensed, but in reality, it's not. Let's just real quick look at a list of things called Donkey Kong, real quick. There's the character, Donkey Kong, the character's grandson, Donkey Kong, the character's son, Donkey Kong, technically Junior, but Donkey Kong nonetheless, the arcade game, Donkey Kong, and all of its subsequent re-releases and sequels, Donkey Kong 2, Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong Jr. Math, and Donkey Kong for the Nintendo Game Boy, released in 1994. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, lovingly referred to as Donkey Kong 94, is one of the most confusing things Nintendo has ever done. On the outside, Donkey Kong 94 is just a re-release of the classic Nintendo arcade game on Nintendo's incredibly popular portable console, the Game Boy. It plays a bit smoother than the original, and most of the other re-releases, so maybe it would be smarter to call it a remaster or a remake. But you get past the first couple of courses that are just like the arcade game, and then things get weird. Donkey Kong 94 is actually the secret mother and father parental figure of the modern Mario platformer. It introduces a slurry of magical advancements to Mario's classic and iconic moveset, the triple jump, the side flip, this thing where he flips into a handstand and can kick barrels around for some reason. Donkey Kong 94 is a game that we have to thank for the creation of Mario's platforming antics in the same way that Donkey Kong for the arcade is what we have to thank for Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. Or how Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is what we have to thank for Super Mario Galaxy. Donkey Kong makes Mario. So back on track. Just because this game is the origin of Mario doesn't mean that it's any good. Being a Mario origin story doesn't merit a good game, although basically every modern Mario platformer is peak platforming content. Here's why you should play Donkey Kong 94. We'll start with a little bit. I just recently played through this game on the Game Boy. My Game Boy, physical copy and everything. I was originally planning to stream a playthrough here on this channel, on the streaming tab, the live tab, but the controls were nasty on my emulator and very official GameCube controller. And so I decided to buy a copy of the game to try it out and make sure it was actually as good as others had told me it would. Maybe the game will make its way onto the Nintendo Switch Game Boy Online service and it will become even easier to play and you won't have to buy it and possibly not have it work from some random guy on eBay. Donkey Kong 94 starts off with the first levels of Donkey Kong. For the average player, this would be the start of realizing what makes this game so different. This is the difference between casual gaming knowledge and people who have experience. I gain access, and once I see how fast I can move and my jumping options, I immediately tried to side flip. And within 3 side flips, the first level of Donkey Kong, the classic 25 meters, is over. It was a magical experience. The next couple of levels don't really introduce anything of notice to the player, and the only reason I knew how to side flip, and other than my ultra gamer knowledge and gamer essence that taught me how to play games for the last 18 years of my life, it was probably because of a certain donkey-based YouTuber's video on the game. After you defeat Donkey Kong in what looks like it must be the end of the game, similarly to the arcade, you're met with heartbreak. Donkey Kong takes Pauline and runs off to the city. New Donk, maybe? This is where some of the mechanics from Super Mario Bros. 2, the USA one, are introduced. Enemies, cute little rats and beetles and kind of like a Spiney's ugly cousin, are now populating the levels. Some enemies can be stood on and can carry over gaps with spikes or water or lava. It's hard to tell on Game Boy. They hurt though. Some enemies are just roadblocks made to increase the difficulty of the game. Moving spikes, the ugly spinies. The act of picking the enemies up is very similar to the mechanics in Super Mario Bros. 2. Another thing can be picked up, and this is the vital piece of the puzzle for each level. A key, the size of Mario, can be picked up, and Mario has to carry it to the locked door to escape each level. This is where this Mario platforming Donkey Kong game strays from the normal Super Mario Bros. Platforming style. It's a lot more of a puzzle game where you have to use the new skills you're unlocking to advance, to find a key to bring to a door. And the door could be right where you start and you have to get the key and get back. The door could be at an end of a level and you'd have to escort the key to it. There's a lot of different like puzzle mechanics here that are introduced that are very similar to this game's eventual sequels or spiritual successors, which we will talk about later. Every couple of levels there's a Donkey Kong fight. Sometimes this means fighting back and using his barrels against him, and sometimes this means simply approaching the ape in hopes of seeing him flee and take Pauline off to another world. After each Donkey Kong encounter, there's a fun little animation that often shows off something new that Mario has access to, or a trick that the game thinks you might want to know about. In this first transition, we see Mario use a new puzzle piece, a timer-based bridge or ladder. In the animation specifically, it shows the timer-based bridge. This puzzle-based platformer doesn't do much to make the game difficult in this new Donk City world. Then you approach the jungle, and there's a lot of difficulty spikes. Overall, it isn't anything too evil and malicious, it's just an older game, and older games are a lot harder than the new games, unless you're out there playing just games that are meant to be hard. It's not hard in a sense where it's, oh, that's really difficult and challenging. It's hard in a sense where it's like, oh, this was made in 1994, and you can kind of tell sometimes. There's some simple puzzle adaptations, levers that might activate or close doors and bridges, but then you get to the third world, the ship world, and that's where things start to get a little bit crazier. There's an introduction of little lines on the screen, and they're very hard to see on a Game Boy. And these little lines can be used to swing and swing, and swing and swing and swing and swing and swing, until Mario gets launched all the way across the screen, just like in Mario Sunshine. In the jungle stages following the ship, the gameplay shifts from the mutated version of the original Donkey Kong and turns into a mutated version of Donkey Kong Jr. He is also appearing in the game, and he tries to stop Mario alongside his father, Donkey Kong, who is Cranky Kong in the future games like Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong lore isn't what we're talking about. Mario continues on this trek, chasing down Donkey Kong and Jr. through airplanes, deserts, frozen tundras, imposing towers, and in the end, he runs into the mutated and final boss form of Donkey Kong. In this final fight, Donkey Kong looks a whole lot more like his inspiration and his namesake, King Kong. Big, threatening, scary, massive ape. Ooh, I've got lady in hand, you know, big monkey. And then the game is over. It's got a good 100-something levels, and it took me a solid 4 to 5 hours to beat the first time. The biggest complaint I have about the game is that the eventual deluxe edition that was meant to come out on the Game Boy Advance, simply titled Donkey Kong Plus, which was going to feature a stage editor, was turned into the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. I think the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series is something very underwhelming compared to the fun platforming and puzzle-based adventure game that Donkey Kong 94 has been. And it's a shame to see the series go the way it did, but considering the impact the game had on future Mario games, it means that many of the abilities Mario has in his future outings were thanks to this Donkey Kong. So even though the series itself might have continued on to become Mario's Marching Minis for Nintendo Wii U, where you can only use amiibos, it also inspired the triple jump and a lot of Mario's moveset in future outings, even in Super Mario 64, which wouldn't come out for another 2 years. I just wish there were more Donkey Kong on current consoles, other than Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which was released 5 years ago. There's basically nothing Donkey Kong on the Switch, and I think we all need some Donkey and Diddy goodness sooner than later. Hopefully with the Nintendo Switch's recent edition of Game Boy Online, we'll be able to see this Donkey Kong game appear, and more than just the Donkey Kong Country games that we already have. Diddy Kong Racing for Nintendo 64. There's a lot of Donkey Kong to be had, but if you can't wait, I cannot recommend this game more. Go play it, emulate it legally, legally play it on your Game Boy. Do whatever you can. It's a super fun game. Leave a comment telling me what Donkey Kong you want to see on Switch, whether it's a remake, a remaster, a re-release, or even a new Donkey Kong game. I would love to hear about it all. Feel free to go down to the comments and let me know. And while you're down there, maybe hit that little red button, and if it's great, don't worry about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Hey. Bye. Cool. Blah.